How you doing? I'm Maurice Wilkey for NeighborMedia and Cambridge Community Television. When you think of the theater, you actually sometimes think of like really expensive tickets, usually going downtown, spending a lot of money. And it's not necessarily relating to subjects that actually you can kind of identify with. Did you know there's actually a theater right here in Cultural Central Square, Cambridge? That's right, it's called the Central Square Theater, and they're actually putting on a production. It's called The Convert, and that's being sponsored and put on by the Underground Railway Theater. And they're actually really big on producing plays that identify with disenfranchised voices. So today we're going to, find out what's going on here with the Underground Railway Theater and the Central Square Theater. Let's step inside with CCTV. Thank you, Maurice Wilkey for NeighborMedia and CCTV, and I am today joined at the Central Square Theater by Megan Sandberg-Zakian.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to thank you for allowing me to get that right this time. And you are the director of The Convert, which is playing here at the Central Square Theater. You are a TCG Future Leaders Grant Award winner. Also, you've actually got the Princess Grace Theater Fellowship. So you got some really good stuff on your resume. And a lot of which I could spend literally the entire interview just going over.
Yeah,
it's very intriguing.
Not do that.
No, but you've got some really cool things in your affiliation with New England theaters. Very well known. Thank you again for joining us. So as I said, you're the director of The Convert, and it's going on through February 28th, actually at the end of this week. And I want to go back kind of to your beginnings. If you just briefly could describe your journey, what made you decide to get into the field of directing in the first place?
Thanks so much for having me and for coming here to the set of The Convert.
Beautiful set, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. I love it. Jenna McFarland Lord is the set designer. She did a great job.
Outstanding.
I guess I brought that up partially because I was raised going to theater, going to lots of theater, and I've always loved the physical space of the theater and the sets and the lights and the sound and all those things. My dad's a playwright and a director, so I got to go to all kinds of awesome and possibly questionable theatrical events.
We'll leave the questionable stuff probably for the next interview. Okay. But so he influenced you, and when he found out you were being a director, was that like a lot of like, wow, he's carrying on the footsteps and stuff?
My mom's a molecular biologist and my dad's a playwright and a director, so I think, they might have hoped I might swing in the other direction a little bit, but yes, they are. They're very proud and very supportive, and, my dad's still like a huge mentor and really the person who's taught me the most and continues to teach me quite a lot.
Have you guys ever collaborated or thought about collaborating on something?
We have, actually, yeah. I
Really?
directed a play of his a number of years ago at the Providence Black Repertory Theater in Rhode Island.
I love the Black Rep. I missed that.
Now that we could talk for 2 hours.
Yeah, see? Told you. I told you about that.
Yeah.
So are there special nuances to directing that for the average person they don't get, kind of, or see,
Yeah, I think, I would imagine there are nuances to all of our jobs that people who don't do them don't have any idea about, and the same is certainly true for directing. I think, one of the things that people always ask me is like, how do you hold so many things in your mind at the same time?
Right.
Because I'm constantly, at any one time, I'm thinking about like the lights, the sound, the set, the props, where everyone's coming in or out, the acting, the story, the audience, the sight line, if you can see from every seat, especially in this kind of setup, which is almost theater in the round.
Yeah.
And then there's also thinking about how's everyone doing, is everything okay, is everyone getting along, and it's a little bit like you're leading a group of people really to do something that can be very emotional, very challenging. So yeah, so that's the thing that I think I work at to get better and better at that, holding those things lightly and gracefully.
There's a lot of hats to actually wear.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing just a few of them. Now, this particular play, The Convert itself, is actually a period piece. It takes place in the 1800s or late 1800s. Now, you talked about how it engages with the local community of Cambridge. How do you bridge that of past and in Cambridge present? Is there a special way of doing that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think definitely a play that takes place in the end of the 1800s and in a different country, takes place in current day Zimbabwe, then was Rhodesia. can feel very far away from us. And I confess, when I first read the play, I felt like, oh my gosh, I need to learn so much about history and geography.
Right.
You know, but in fact, audiences have not had trouble connecting with the play. And I think that's because the play and the playwright is, she calls herself Zamerican. She's
Danai Gurira?
Yeah, who's an extraordinary playwright, has a play opening on Broadway currently, another play opening off Broadway, and people know her as the zombie slayer, Michonne on The Walking Dead. So.
I don't know how she's able to do so many things. That's just incredible to me.
Yeah, she's certainly a superwoman. She talks about growing up between two cultures, Zimbabwe and the U.S. And I think that this play, although it takes place in quite a while, a long time ago, it captures that feeling of being caught between two cultures or two identities, and feeling equally connected to both, which so many of us have experienced that feeling, whether it's religious or cultural or based in family or our jobs. And personally, my mom's Armenian and my father's Jewish. My partner's African American, and our lives are, sometimes it feels like it's hard to integrate, and there's pressure to relate more to one community than another, and the play is really about that, and it's about the dangers of splitting yourself up.
And I believe that, a lot of those messages are still, those themes still kind of resonate today. So I understand how it actually will appeal to an audience here in Cambridge. I mean, you don't necessarily do stuff you said full time anymore, so you still have occasionally do productions here. Does this theater give you, settings or opportunities that other theaters in other parts of Massachusetts don't?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the mission of Underground Railway Theater in particular, which is the company that I've worked the most with here, is really unique in the sense that the part of the mission of the theater is to be in the tradition of, and inspired by the tradition of the Underground Railway. It's about sort of bringing us, wrestling with things that are hard and bringing us into an expanded image of the possible. And I love that mission. I think it's really beautiful. And so, yes, definitely, I mean, this is a very ambitious play. I am thrilled that the theater is producing it. I haven't had the opportunity to direct a play like this at other theaters. It's huge. I mean, it's a historical epic. It has, all these costumes, this beautiful set. It's 3 acts, but don't be scared. It flies by. Everyone says it. It's a classic. It's a play with a classic structure that is completely unique. You've never seen anything like this before.
Now, you seem like you really are very into this type of production. Are these the type of productions going forward that you want to be more in a part of?
Yes, I mean, I would love to direct all of Danai's plays if I could. Her work is really extraordinary.
Wow, very cool.
But I think in general, her work represents something that I am particularly interested, which is something that's integrative. That is a fusion of multiple ideas and multiple styles and multiple cultures. That's not just kind of. Theater is Shakespeare, and we must sit quietly in our chairs, in the dark or whatever, right? But that sort of asks us to engage with each other, with a story, with the community, with new ideas that we might not have heard or thought about before. So yes.
Very cool. Now, I mean, I'm going to kind of like go and come back. I'm going to do that a lot. But I mean, it's a somewhat within acting. Like, what is this? It kind of goes around the question of what is the state of theater of color, black theater specifically, because I mean, I've heard a lot recently about the state of motion pictures. I mean, the whole controversy about the Oscars and the lack of diversity in terms of the nominations. Does black theater have that same kind of difficulty, if you want to call it that? I mean, you've done a numerous amount of plays. Do you see that in your comings and goings? Yeah,
thank you for asking that question. We talked about Black Rap a little bit earlier, and I was the associate artistic director there for a number of years, and that theater went under. During the recession back in 2009-ish, the theater ceased to exist. And that has been the fate of a lot of our so-called culturally specific theaters, be they black theaters, Asian American theaters, Native theaters. It's something that I feel very strongly about that we need to nurture these institutions that nurture artists of a particular cultural background or a particular affinity, maybe LGBTQ theaters, which is a great one in town, the Theater Offensive.
Yes.
And it's also important for other theaters that don't identify as culturally specific to be producing a wide range of work that reflects the entire experience of their community. So it's an interesting time to ask that question. You know, right now in Boston we have on stage an Octoroon at Company One and Arts Emerson. We have Milk Like Sugar at the Huntington.
Right.
We have The Convert at Central Square Theater.
And I know it's February.
And it's February. We're about to go into March, and we'll have Booty Candy at the Speakeasy stage, which is terrific. So I think, and there's Fast Company, which is a play with all Asian American actors coming up at the Lyric, and you know, there's quite a lot of interesting diversity. At this moment in the Boston theater scene. I would say it waxes and wanes, it comes and goes. And I would also say that I would love to see more artists of color directing. I would love to see more artists of color as designers, scenic designers, you know, lighting designers. I would love to see more artists of color running theater companies, not just culturally specific theater companies, managing directors, artistic directors, development directors. All those are the things that we really need to see before we can get to a place where our cultural ecosystem is like really truly feels equitable. Right now it feels like we can point to a lot of things that are exciting, and we're still in the struggle. I think we're farther ahead than Hollywood is.
Oh, the theater's okay. I like the sound of that, and maybe you guys will follow along.
But I don't think that's saying much. I don't think that's really like a big badge.
Okay, well, this is not necessarily. I'm not trying to be. This is not a theater bashing expedition. It's basically, I just wanted to kind of get your opinion about what the state of theater was. I mean, because that question comes up, and I know some actors kind of delve their chops in both. So I thank you for asking that. Now, do you have any favorite works that you've done up to date? I mean, like I know maybe they're all like children for you. Is there a favorite? In addition to this one, of course. Of course,
this will definitely go into my heart as a huge favorite. The first play I ever directed here at Central Square Theater is one of my favorite shows ever. It was called Harriet Jacobs, and it was an adaptation of the slave narrative that Harriet Jacobs wrote, called Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, adapted by a then local playwright, Lydia Diamond, who has since left us for Chicago and Broadway at the moment, off Broadway actually. So Lydia took this narrative and adapted it into the most just beautiful, stunning play that was, and I think this relates to what we were talking about before, it was a story about the past, but it resonated so strongly in the present. The main character starts off by just looking directly at the audience and addressing them and saying, I know you think you know this story, like you've heard a story about slavery before, but please just put that out of your mind, because basically, like, this is crazy. Like, you think that you know this, but actually I lived through it, and I don't know it. I don't understand it. I'm still, like, my mind is still blown by what I went through and by how people, what I've seen people do to each other. And so I ask you to come along in a fresh way with me on this journey. And just starting the play like that, it was an amazing evening.
Theater has a way of setting tones like that somehow movies just can't do.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, it's great to be live in a room with other people, you know?
And you've actually had, like, in addition to local writers like Lydia, you've actually worked with famous artists like Danny Glover. Are there other actors that you are dreaming or have worked or going to work with that you know about?
Well, you're about to interview Nehassaiu deGannes, who's in this play, and I have always wanted to direct her. I'm really excited I'm getting the opportunity to do so on this show. And you know, there's so many amazingly talented, awesome colleagues. I think that I dream of working with certain actors, but then every time you audition, you meet new actors that just blow you out of the water.
Wow, that must be such a challenge. You have to, like, meet so many different people, and they're probably all good, and you're like, oh, well, this person's just a little bit better. I don't envy you in that task. Well, once again, I look forward, and I hope people are I hope the response as far as people coming through the doors is good and continues to be so for the Underground Railway Theater.
We hope everyone will come see the show. It's really special, and you don't have to drive all the way to New York to see Danai Gurira's work. You know, for one more week, you can still see it here in Cambridge.
Thank you very much. If people want more information, they can go to the Central Square Theater website, which
That's
is
right.
centralsquaretheater.org.
Centralsquaretheater.org.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time again. Look forward to more of your productions.
Thank you.
Not just here, but other places. All right.
Are you going to come see the show?
I am.
Okay.
I am. I better.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I'll see you there.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Maurice Wilkey, NeighborMedia for CCTV. And I am joined by one of the actors in the play, The Convert. And I'm not going to butcher your name, so I'm going to ask you to say it for me.
Nehassaiu, deGannes.
Thank you. I could have got your last name right. But I was like, no, I don't want this person to be mad at me. But thank you very much for joining us today. And I was like, just talking with your director, Megan, just a little while ago. And your character is Prudence in this particular play. And you actually have a lot of local kind of roots. You're an MFA grad from Brown.
Yeah.
And you actually are also a graduate of Trinity Rep Conservatory. So my first question to you is, what got you into this acting?
Wow.
What captured the acting bug for you? Was there a role or a thing, you know?
That's a great question, and you've touched on one of the seeds of that. I mean, if I go back to when I was little, I've always loved stories, telling stories, making up stories. Went to the theater quite a bit with my family growing up, which was wonderful. I did take one drama class in 9th grade, and I was in the High School Musical, which was The Wizard of Oz, and I played a Munchkin.
Was it The Wiz or was it The Wizard of Oz?
It was The Wizard of Oz.
Okay. Not that there's anything wrong with any one of them.
I'm familiar with both of them. If it was The Wiz, I would have said The Wiz.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And but then did not take any other drama classes for the rest of high school. I did study dance, and really it was when I got to Brown and I was studying poetry, the graduate playwrights, the MFA playwrights, kept inviting me to be in their plays.
Oh.
And many of those playwrights were African American playwrights, playwrights of color, and at first it was very low commitment. These were like, 2 weeks of rehearsals, maybe 3 weeks of rehearsals, new plays, 2 weekends of shows, low commitment, but it was language, and I love language as a poet. The dancer in me, the storyteller in me was sort of fond of performing.
Wow.
And it was collaborative and a really nice counterpoint to the solitary nature of writing poetry. I was like, sure. And then literally something picked me up, was like, well, then will you be in my thesis play? And then one of the MFA directors saw my work and invited me to be in a main stage production at Brown. I mean, literally. And then I sort of lifted my head and I realized my community, my artistic community, were really the other theater artists, not so much my fellow MFA writers. And so I took note of that.
Okay.
And one of my mentors, who has since passed away, Aisha Rahman, she was writing a new play. I helped workshop that new play, and then a downtown Providence theater was doing a production. She asked the director to audition me, and I got the lead.
Oh, wow.
And so I said to Aisha, I think this is what I really want to do.
Isn't that something?
And then I auditioned for Trinity Rep Conservatory's 3-year graduate acting program. And sort of, that was all she wrote, and then I finished that, and I was invited to be a member of the company. And I know you and Megan talked a little bit about Providence Black Rep.
I was just about to ask you about that. Now, where did that get squeezed into history there?
Well, that was after I'd finished my training at Trinity Rep Conservatory. Had been in the company for a couple of seasons, and I'm sort of ready to consider relocating. But Providence is a wonderful, wonderful town to be a young and emerging artist, right? I mean, it's the arts per capita, it's such a high ratio, and it's a small enough place that you get to know people get to know you. So I worked at Black Rep, and I worked at the GAM, for example. I wrote a one-woman show that I did in collaboration with Rights and Reason Theater at Brown. Wow. So it was in that time that I was at Black Rep, and I did Jar the Floor there, and a production of House of Bernardo Alba. And I was a standby for one of Megan's productions. The actress needed one day off to attend, I think, her daughter's graduation, and I stepped in.
Oh, wow.
But this play is the first time Megan and I have been able to work together in this way. It's my first time being directed by her, so that's really exciting.
That's fascinating. Wow. I mean, I could go on for days about Black Rep Theater. I loved it. And I was just like mentioning that I would actually go literally, I mean, it's not like it's a long trip, but an hour away for some theater. You must like theater, so, and I do. So She's a really good director. So working here at Central Square Theater, are there any subtle nuances to being here versus places like Providence or Canada or?
I mean, well, this is my first time working here. I've seen shows here before.
Yeah.
I came and saw the Harriet Jacobs play.
Yes.
I saw The Mountaintop.
I saw that too, great play.
Yeah, and I saw Remembering H.M., which I really enjoyed. And I feel that it is a theater that really does fulfill its stated mission. You know, as it says right there in the lobby,
Yes.
Epic stories told intimately.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that they were courageous enough to produce The Convert, right? It's a 3-hour play.
Three-hour play, yeah.
Right? Shavian dealing with, you know, colonial Southern Africa,
Right.
a rich constellation of characters, complex, human, humorous, but deeply moving material.
Did you have to do a lot of research for that yourself, for the character that you play?
We did a fair amount. We were given access to a wonderful dramaturgical package that really excavates this time period, also looks at Shona and Matebele culture pre the European presence in Southern Africa, looks at this particular moment in history, which is a real sort of crucible and cauldron, all these forces coming together.
Right.
Yeah, so we had access to that research, and I did a little bit of research on my own as well.
Okay. Now, yeah, but obviously we're talking about another country, we're talking
Yes.
about another continent and a
Yes.
country in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Do the themes, you know, do you think they resonate with this audience?
I can't speak for the audience, but
For you as an actor?
they certainly resonate for me, and the sense that we're getting from the audience. I mean, the way in which they listen, the way in which they're engaged, the way in which they're responding afterwards in talkbacks or in the lobby. It's clear that yes, these themes are resonating both in terms of, oh my goodness, I didn't know this history, but also resonating in terms of how it reverberates with the very socio-political issues that we are contending with right now.
Today, yeah.
Yeah.
You're dealing with like choices of your culture and taking on new thoughts of something different that you never encountered before, and how that might clash with what you've been brought up with.
Right, and what are the costs of that? What are the costs of social change? Also, who gets to have, right, authorial power? You know, that scene where Chilford says to Esther, you can never contradict Father Bart. And she goes back to the Bible and says, but Jesus says, right, we should admonish one another. We should be critical thinkers, she's
Right.
saying, that I should be an equal participant. And so it's not just that it's Christianity, but it's Christianity, right, as a tool of colonialism. Christianity is a tool of white supremacy, where the rule is, oh, no, you never contradict a person simply because they're white. That you're not being brought into this changed society as an equal. And that's the journey that Prudence goes on. I mean, like Esther, Nehassaiu, this new thing has allowed me to escape a forced betrothal, right? Has allowed me as a woman a certain kind of independence that doesn't exist in traditional Shona culture, right? Which is a very communal culture. I mean, it's not that men had more power under that kind of patriarchal society, but everyone's identity was a communal identity. I am because we are. No, there was no woman that could exist outside of, right, the family network, an extended family network. And you couldn't resist sort of those traditional rules about other people deciding who you married and so forth. So as Prudence, I get to escape that. I have an education.
I mean, speak to the themes. I mean, you're kind of doing it
Yeah.
right now. I think the themes of the feminism wasn't necessarily there in the same force that maybe that is here today, but it seems like that character is really emerging.
She is emerging, and what was really interesting to see in the research is that, you know, these things aren't black and white. Like, human beings are always seeking out ways of exercising their sense of self and their agency.
Right.
So one of the things that we learned in the research is that even in the traditional culture where women didn't have much of a voice, they might express their concerns or their complaints by how they named their children. Right? So if I named my children, my husband is mean to me, and I'm paraphrasing, every time somebody called that child's name, what that woman was feeling inside was said. So we have to remember that human beings are always, right, we're inventive. We find ways of expressing ourselves.
Yes.
So that seed is there, or that current is there, and then along comes this missionary culture that says, oh no, girls have a right to be educated. Oh no, it should only be one man for one wife. And so, yeah, here's a tool that I can use to express myself even further. But then what's the limit? Like, how far can you dance in the lion's mouth in terms of, again, this notion of who can you contradict? Does your life matter?
And that definitely
at the end
resonates
of the day,
today. Yeah,
right?
and that definitely
Does your
resonates
life
today.
matter as much as someone? Does your voice matter?
Wow.
The sense of, no matter how much education I have, will they still see me as this other?
Wow.
Right? And I love Prudence because she is really looking at how do I create a hybrid? How can I speak the Queen's English, know how to make a proper cup of tea, drink it,
Navigate yourself
properly,
through that day to day.
But at the same time, Prudence says, I am and always will be a mate ballet.
Wow.
And she's trying to create this, to weave the two together, which I think is the most human response to change. In some ways, the most powerful response to change, but are we all always allowed the right to claim that for ourselves?
Good question. Maybe the play, I'm sure that the play definitely answers that.
Or at least raises
Or at least raises that question. I think that theater does that in ways that movies cannot. You have done so many different things. Your bio talks about how you like to do stuff in the past, including things like, you were Lady Capulet, Romeo and Juliet, Angel, Marisol, Nurse, Catherine, and Proof. Do you like period pieces that go back in time, or do you like more present day, or do you just like do each one of them just have something different?
Yeah, I like doing contemporary work as much as I like doing classical work. I guess the thing that I'm most drawn to is a play that's rich in language.
Okay.
It doesn't always have to be dense or complex language, but for example, I got to do Doubt by John Patrick Shanley, and another amazing playwright, and that character, Mrs. Muller, has one scene, and he has this, like David Lindsay Abaire, who wrote Good People, they have this ability to write language that on our ear feels very conversational and very natural, but they're clearly lovers of the theater and lovers of actor, because when you begin to mine that language, there's so many clues there about your character, your character's place in society. And so I'm, as an actor, as an artist, I'm very much drawn to language, whether it's contemporary or classical work.
But does that go back to, or does it, because I know within reading about you, you have poetry in your, you just said it about poetry and writing in your background. Does that strike a chord? I mean, actors look for meaty roles. Do you look for it more because of the writing, even more than probably the average person?
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to speak for the average person. I don't want to go into some kind of comparison, but I know I look for the language to do this with me, to kind of, to resonate, or to make me curious, or to, that Emily Dickinson, that aha moment. And again, it that's my way in. So maybe, yes, I think other actors may have other ways into the work, but I know that language is definitely one of my ways in.
And it assists you. Because does your poetry assist you in your acting in some ways?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe my willingness to really trust that if the playwright wrote it, there's a reason for it to be there.
Okay.
So that kind of close reading, delighting in different playwrights' rhythms, not expecting every playwright to write in a way that echoes how I speak, but to really sort of trust that they're coding something for us in whatever rhythms they found for those characters or for that play world. Trusting in that. And also trusting silence. Being a lover of language, it's been really wonderful playing supporting roles too, because you're again reminded that acting is as much about listening as it is about speaking. Right? That when a playwright includes silence, or if your character isn't speaking, again, there's a reason for that too. Wow. And poetry very much is that dance of this what's spoken and what's left silent.
And you're also an award winner in your poetry too.
Thank you.
I mean, found that you have written chapbooks.
Yes.
And I was like, and thank you for defining that for me, because I didn't know what that was. I'm like, is it a chapter in a book?
Right. In a sense, you can think of it, because as I said, it's usually only 20 to 25 pages of poetry.
And you got, what is it? Was it 2008 poetry?
Oh, fellowship from Rhode Island State Council on the Arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you take breaks from acting and say, or does it always, are they both ongoing and overlapping?
They were at one point,
Okay.
not so much right now, currently. For the last 3 years, I've been freelance acting.
Okay.
And so doing the work of getting the work has really been occupying most of my creative energy.
Okay.
But for example, when I was a company member at Trinity Rep, because you know what your season is going to be at the beginning of a season, and you're sort of guaranteed 2, 3, sometimes 4 shows a season, I knew when my breaks would be. And it was in those breaks when I wasn't in a show that I would write. Or I also had, when I was in Providence working at some of the smaller theaters, I had a schedule where I would wake up in the morning and write for 5 hours. And then I would go for a walk and sort of, clear my head, and then I would go to rehearsal in the afternoon, or I would go to the theater for a show at night. And I really enjoyed that routine. Now that I'm based in New York and the pace is a little different, the scale of what I'm doing is different. I've had the opportunity to go away to Stratford Festival in Canada, which is an 8-month contract, 3 shows in rep.
Whoa.
Yeah, rehearsing and then running concurrently.
Whoa.
So that's been very, very exciting. I was at Chicago Shakes fall of 2014. So doing less writing these days, but thank you, because people keep asking me. So I think like Prudence, I have to find a way of weaving the two together.
Yes. Yes. And we hope that you do that and maybe write a poetic play. I don't know.
Maybe.
Marrying the two.
Yeah.
I only have a couple more questions. And you touched upon the fact that you're in New York, and a lot of acting is based in New York. I mean, theater is definitely very strong there, both stage and on screen. And like the recent thing, especially the screen, is about like the diversity and the voices that get heard on screen.
Yeah.
Is the stage experiencing that same kind of lack thereof, or?
I think it's a very, very exciting time to be an actor, to be a storyteller, whether in theater or television or film. I mean, it feels like, right, Denai right now, the playwright of this play, has a play in previews on Broadway.
Right.
Eclipse with Lupita Nyong'o. She has another play that will premiere at Playwrights Horizon this spring. She herself is on television. So if we just look at that model,
so
right?
It doesn't seem like it's...
Lydia Diamond was recently on Broadway. Katori Hall's play was recently on Broadway. Look at what Shonda Rhimes is changing the face of television.
Yes.
I'm excited. I'm
and Viola
excited.
Davis, who actually is a local, New England resident from Connecticut, who's doing a lot of things.
She's Rhode Island.
Oh, I thought she
She's
was
Central
Connecticut.
Falls. No.
Oh, sorry.
She went to Rhode Island College for undergrad.
Thank you.
And then, oh no.
Somehow I thought she had some Connecticut connection. I'm probably
It's Rhode
wrong.
Island connection.
All right, thank you.
I just think I'm grateful to be alive right now. And I just think the multiplicity of stories that are being told. And I just think that, there are certain things happening right now politically, but I think one of the reasons that stuff is happening is because a lot of people are really excited and willing to share stories across these boundaries, these supposed borders, right? And I think for other folks that's a little scary. And they want to keep telling us that's not normal, that's not normal. But people,
it's almost like your story here about, there's a limit.
But I think we keep pushing the edge of that limit, and it's exciting.
As it seems like, as is this play, and it's running through the rest of this week.
Yes, and I hope people come out to see it. It's the first time it's being done in New England, because it is. It's a relatively large cast for smaller theaters. It's a meaty play. I don't know if it's going to come this way again, so folks have to come out and see it this week.
Please do.
Right?
Yes, I'm going to be here. I'm going to definitely be here. And last question, I guess, do you have any works in the future that we should be looking out for you to be a part of?
Well, thanks. I don't have anything booked in this area coming up. I head back to New York. I'm going to the Hamptons for 3 days in March, a developmental workshop of a new piece, and we'll do a work in progress showing. And then in the fall, I know I'm slated to be in Toronto to do an original stage adaptation of Brave New World.
Brave New World. Okay.
Yeah, and I will be auditioning soon as I get back to the city next week. Yeah.
Well, thank you, and thank you for blessing the Cambridge stage and the Central Square Theater stage. If people want to get these tickets, go to centralsquaretheater.org. Definitely look for me in the house somewhere. But thank you again, Ms. deGannes.
Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to hopefully having you come around this way again and do some more acting. So thank you for your time today. All right, so that concludes our report for Neighbor Media. Please look for more stories at NeighborMedia.org. I'm Maurice Wilkey. Have a good day.